Okay, so this is a little weird, but I get a lot of questions from like my friends and family asking me like what's going on with the Mustang. So I thought I would just like make a video and kind of talk about some of the stuff that I've done to it so far and what some of the plans are moving forward. And then maybe if it's like interesting enough, I'll make some more videos because we are in quarantine and I don't really have anything to do. So this is my 1990 Ford Mustang GT. It is an original AOD car. It is vibrant red with black interior, and it is a sunroof car. I bought it out in near Detroit in 2017. It is virtually rust-free. The paint is a little faded. It sat in a car lot for about 10 years, so the paint really faded on it. But for a project car, it was exactly what I was looking for. Something that was basically all original, basically all there, and was just ripe to be taken and modified and built, and that's exactly what I planned on doing with this car. So, as you can see, as soon as I brought it home, the problems of an all-original car started to show up. The brakes were making all kinds of noise, the suspension was making all kinds of noise, so I knew it was time to just start with that. I wanted the car to be able to move and drive under its own power, and the calipers were completely marred up by the rotors because the bushings were wore out, the shocks and struts were leaking, the bearings were shot, the brake shoes and drums were all destroyed. So that's the first sort of upgrade slash modification slash repairs that I started to do with the car. Was all new front brakes, all new bearings, all new rear brakes, all new brake lines in the rear. I mean, new shocks, new struts, painted the drums and calipers. The only real upgrade that I did was stainless steel braided soft lines, and also better pads and better rotors. So the car stops pretty good now, and as you can see, it also looks pretty good too. So that was really the first sort of step that I had to do in order to get the car where it would run and drive under its own power, and then I could sort of address some of the other things that it was going to need. So then I did what any logical person would do and pulled the engine out and pulled the transmission out and bought a new engine that was all built with high performance parts so that I could go fast and do burnouts and make bad decisions. And then I got a new transmission for it. Then I tried my hand at some paint work. Okay, so when I pulled the engine out of this car, it became apparent to me that I needed a lot more work in the engine bay than I originally had thought. Basically, the paint all along the strut towers here, all over the K-member, the power steering rack and pinion, everywhere was just peeling off. It was covered in grease and oil for so long that when I actually took a pressure washer to this thing and cleaned it up, the paint just came right off with it. So it became apparent to me that I needed to do a lot more work in the engine bay than I anticipated originally doing. So what I ended up doing was stripping all the paint off of the K-member and off of the strut towers, the firewall, the frame rails here, and basically repainted everything. And that was a process that I didn't intend on doing when I started this build. It's just something that ended up happening because I thought that it needed it. I knew I was putting in the new DSS 306 motor, and I knew that motor was going to look really good, and I didn't want this crusty, nasty firewall and paint underneath the hood to kind of clash with it. So all I did was I stripped all the paint off of everything you see underneath the hood here, except for along the top edge right here. That paint, because I couldn't, that paint was on there so good still, it really wasn't peeling off, that I didn't think I should bother with it because I was afraid that I would get into more of a situation where the paint on the all the cowl would have to come off. And then I just basically pulled the wiring harness out as best as I could, and sanded it all down, painted it, primed it, painted it, and the actual frame rails here, you know, on the Foxbody Mustangs, these are really notorious for rusting out. Water and everything just sits right in here. But mine were actually in pretty good shape. The only problem was this one did have some rust. You can kind of see right here that it was starting to oxidize on the metal. So I did use a POR 15 system on the frame rails and just pretty much painted all along here. It's a whole chemical system that you have to buy, metal prep, sanding, all that type of stuff, and you paint it basically with like a sealant that seals the rust in, and then once after that you can sand it down and you can paint it with anything. So I just used HVT paint for everything, and I think it turned out pretty good. I mean, the paint on my Foxbody Mustang, this is a bright red. The paint on this is not great anyway. You can see if we go over to the side here, specifically, like, this car sat out in the sun for a long time, so the paint is very badly oxidized. The clear coat is coming off in some places. So I wasn't that concerned about having like an absolutely minty paint job, but I did want it to look nice. So as you can see, I painted the K member in a gloss high temp black, and I used a Ford red engine enamel red on the firewall and the strut towers. And just at glance, it looks pretty good, but you can see here the difference, really. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up, but you can see how this is a much brighter red than this. And unfortunately, you know, I wasn't going to spend the time, considering how bad this paint is, I wasn't going to spend the time really trying to color match the engine bay with the outside of the car. So what I ended up doing was just finding a color that I thought looked good. This Ford engine enamel red or whatever, it's the same paint color that I used on the calipers and the drums on this car, and I ended up just painting it with that. But I think once you get the engine in here, once the hood is on, once everything's back to normal and you're outside in the bright sun, I really don't think you're going to be able to tell the difference. So I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. And once again, this is a garage built car. You know, this isn't something that's going to ever go to like a car show and win an award. You know, these Foxbody Mustangs were really built to be driven and driven hard. They're not necessarily everybody's idea of a good looking show car. So that was one of the projects that definitely took a lot longer than I anticipated it. It definitely kind of took on a life of its own, but ultimately I think it was definitely well worth it. Yeah, so that's a video of some of the projects that I've had to do on my Foxbody Mustang build thus far. Basically just replacing a lot of brakes and suspension components. Now I have a new motor, new transmission, both of which are professionally built and ready to make a lot of power. I got a crazy good deal on them. Maybe I'll make a video about those next if anybody wants to see them. So you guys take it easy, and I hope you enjoyed the video.